It is 7:07 p.m. The March 13th, 2018 meeting of the Evanston Preservation Commission is called to order. We have a quorum. The first item of business is the 2010 Dewey Avenue nomination for Evanston Landmark designation. And if I could have a motion from one of the commissioners to open the public hearing for this.
I move that we open the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And if you could, okay, all in favor. If we can have, it was unanimous, Carl.
Yep.
Carlos. The first presenter is the nominator, which I believe is Dino Robinson. If you want to come forward and provide your presentation.
Good evening, commissioners, city staff, and public. Thank you for allowing me to present this on behalf of the community members that asked me to do this. My name is Morris Robinson Jr. Most people in the community know me as Dino Robinson. I am, for sake of disclosure, I am the founder of the Shorefront Legacy Center here in Evanston that documents the African American community on Chicago's suburban North Shore. We are an archival repository. And for additional full disclosure, I am a full-time employee at Northwestern University, Northwestern University Press. So on behalf of this community members who have a history with the structure at 2010 Dewey Avenue, known today as the Weisbord Homes Family Focus Center, Shorefront wishes to submit this application for consideration of a landmark nomination on the basis of three designations criteria defined in Section 4.2-8-4. The criteria is suggested as follows. Number 2 is identification with a persons or persons who significantly contributed to the historic, cultural, architectural, archaeological, or related aspects of the development of the city of Evanston, state of Illinois, Midwest region, or United States. For number 6, in association with the important cultural or social aspects or events in the history of the city of Evanston, the state of Illinois, the Midwest region, or the United States. And its exemplification of a pattern of neighborhood development or settlement significant to the cultural histories or traditions of the city of Evanston, whose component may lack individual distinction. The structure at 2010 Dewey Avenue embodies a sense of community that has stood for over a century in Evanston's community. More specifically, the structure serves a particular segment of Evanston's community as a school, as a symbol of social change, and currently a place for social services. As a former foster school, it has educated generations of residents who have made significant and local, national, and global contributions to society. It later evolved to the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Experimental School, serving as a model for innovative teaching, while at the same time addressing the significant social changes during the 1960s, specifically desegregating school systems here in Evanston. As Family Focus, a social service center, the structure pioneered programming that has had a lasting effect in the community it serves. In addition, the building has seated new upstart organizations who have moved on and continue to thrive. The original 1905 structure was designed by Ernest Woodyard, an Evanston resident that stood until the fire gutted the structure in 1958. A 1926 edition by the architects Charles and Smith added more classrooms, a theater, and gymnasium. The 1961 edition replaced the original 1905 structure after it suffered a catastrophic fire. In considering this proposal, we made reference to a 1996 study supported by an Evanston Community Development Block Grant to create a West Evanston Conservation District. The study birthed the work group Preserving Integrity Through Cultural and History, or known by the acronym as PITCH. As the study stated, the organization's notes, the ideal conservation area is one that is crisply, if broadly defined, and easily distinguished from the traditional historic district that possesses form, character, and visual qualities derived from the arrangements or combination of topography, vegetation, space, scenic vistas, architecture, and apparatus features, or places of natural or cultural significance that create an image of stability, comfort, local identity, and livable atmosphere. The work of Pitch encompassed several years of research and engagement in the targeted community to ultimately reach 4 long-term goals: to establish and maintain a West Evanston Conservation District, to amend Evanston Historic Preservation Ordinance to allow projects affecting the West Evanston Conservation District, to encourage increased involvement in historic preservation issues by residents of the West Evanston Conservation District, and to raise visibility of cultural, historic, and architectural resources, sites, and structures of the West Evanston Conservation District. This report by Mackin, authored by Mackin, was later submitted to the Preservation Commission for consideration. However, it is by the ideas and concepts of Pitch supported by Mackin's report that will support a community member affected by the history of the structure and the historical symbolic role the structure has embodied. We're short from proposals that 2010 Dewey Avenue be considered for a landmark nomination. In the packets that you have and that was made available to the public, there is a lot of support material that talk about the history of the building, but I would like to take some time, if I may, to highlight some aspects of why the structure is important to its community and for the historical aspect of Evanston. The history of Evanston mirrors much of what happened in this nation. It did practice early on in its history the system of Jim Crow, where Foster School became the de facto segregated school in Evanston. And in that birthed a lot of interesting students that came through that system. And I'd like to highlight some of these individuals that did some really remarkable things. Junior Mance, who was a jazz pianist who has already published over 45 jazz albums and one publication, How to Play Blues Piano. He's still currently being memorialized in a documentary film about his life and career in New York, where he later moved to and started teaching. Dorothy Bayan, or known locally here as Dorothy Hadley before she moved away, and married the first nephew to King Haile Selassie in Ethiopia. Her work in fighting against the Italian occupation in Ethiopia led to the founding and establishment of the Ethiopian World Federation and the Ethiopian Star newspaper. Both entities still exist to this day. Fred Hutcherson is a self-taught aviator who lived here in Evanston, a product of that school, who later went on to train in Canada and then ferry bombers and fighters across the Atlantic Ocean. He later had flight school classes, tried to open an airport in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and later turned that into a training center, and then later trained Tuskegee Airmen to fly. William Logan, who was Evanston's first African-American police chief and co-founder of the Fellowship of African-American Men and the Chessman Club of the North Shore. Sanders Hicks, who became Evanston's first African-American fire chief in Evanston. He was also the founder of the Evanston Speed Skating Club, and then later trained Shawnee Davis, who went on to win a gold medal in the Winter Olympics. Iva Crothers, PhD scholar whose work in religion and equity has led her charge and her voice nationwide in multiple activities. Joseph Hill, who became Evanston's first African-American superintendent, and now the school district administration building is named in his honor. And for those who are Queen Sugar fans who are watching on TV right now, Tina Lifford had her first acting chops Christian on the stages of Foster School. She went on to star in many movies. I think when I last looked, over 45 productions altogether. And now she's a regular at Queen Sugar, and she also still produces her own plays. Leon Robinson Jr., who was Evanston's well-known business person. There are many others who are like that who have done remarkable things throughout this building. It was the base for community development. It was the base for home and engagement in the community. As it operated as a school, the Foster School PTA was very active in engaging community members, keeping them connected. The teachers knew each other, the residents knew each other, and the students knew each other. As it grew and changed through its process to become an experimental school, to introduce innovative teaching methods in the community, it involved also introduced busing students from different schools to another, and also launched the in-school lunch programs because of the proximity of students being bused. And then its closing, and then its birth to become a much needed and deserved and well-used entity for the Home of Family Focus to engage in their innovative programming and social services. And it's by this and with the spirit of the pitch work with developing the West End Preservation District is the reason why we're presenting this in honoring this historical aspect of what the 2010 structure at Dewey Avenue has encompassed and meant to the community. Over the last several decades, this community has fought to preserve many other buildings that has not followed through with that. The community lost the Emerson Street YMCA. They lost the last Butler building that was important to the community, and then a change of hands of what happened with the community hospital, the original community hospital that was torn down to make way for more parking. This symbol right here is one of the last symbolism of the strength and bonds of the Fifth Ward community, the African-American community specifically. And this proposal puts forth an idea to move forward with the hard work that the Pitch Committee had so pioneered through the mid-1990s. And with that, I complete my report. If there's any questions? No?
Thank you. Dino, did you want to go over any of your slides at all, or?
I didn't have any slides with me. I didn't know I was like.
Oh, okay.
I would love.
That's fine.
These, you know. Make me want to go to my computer and.
Okay.
Up there, but.
Okay. Thank you. If we can, at this point, hear public comment regarding the nomination. Do we have a sign-in sheet here? Oh, thanks, Mary. Oh, thank you. Okay, the first person that signed up is Roshan Patel, and I think you're on one of the subsequent cases. Am I correct? Okay, thank you. First is Derica Ross.
I wasn't trying to speak. I just thought there was a sign-in sheet.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Next is Eva Jones. Pardon?
I thought it was a regular sign-in sheet.
Oh,
But she asked that I speak for her.
okay. Is that, if you could sign in, please, and then introduce yourself.
Sign me into please.
Good evening. My name is Christian Harris, and I am a longtime resident of Evanston. Actually went to the old King Lab School, and that was over 37 years ago. And I was letting some people know, I still remember the day that they closed the school and said they were going to ship us to Skiles. So that was almost 40 years ago. I remember falling on the floor we weren't going to leave the building, a bunch of us. We were like, we're never going to school again. How can we go somewhere else? This is our King Lab. This was one of the first institutions where the groups got to stay together. So I knew my friends from kindergarten until we went to high school, and we were a family. We were such a family unit. And I remember not realizing, and whether this is a funny story or not, actually how impoverished I was, and I wasn't necessarily. But when I went with my friends who lived in white communities, their homes to me felt as big as King Lab. But it didn't matter because we all went to school together. We all loved each other. I wish I had time to have brought the class of 1987 who went to King Lab here, because we are strong proponents for keeping this building. I don't live in that ward anymore, but I always go by there. I work with Family Focus as a community volunteer, because that again is my home. That is a home for that area, and we've lost everything. As Dino said, we've lost everything else. I remember the why. I remember those other buildings, and we have to leave something. If Evanston is what we say we are, then we have to leave something for those who are still there. So thank you for your time.
If you can give me the sign-in sheet once you've. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Eva Jones, or were you speaking for her? Okay. Katerina Varvan?
I don't have anything to say.
Oh, okay. Andrew Oting?
I'm presenting later.
Oh, you are, okay. Mary McWilliams?
I am speaking on this subject.
Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome. Excuse me, I'm Mary McWilliams. I'm a long time, I was a commissioner. I was an associate commissioner forever. I also served with Ann Earl on pitch back in the 90s. It was a lot of fun. We actually had the National Trust come up here for one of their educational sessions, which was quite an experience. I'm speaking for the nomination as a nomination for history. It is one of the very few, if not the only one, that isn't being nominated strictly for history. While a building is fine, it is not necessary. The ordinance does not say that the building must be designated for architecture or for the architects. It can be nominated for history only. And I think the history of all the people who have come out of that building, and for all of the community, a sense of community that that building represents, is so powerful that I don't think it needs anything else. I think it stands by itself, and I would urge you to approve this nomination. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Next is Al Gibbs.
Good evening. My name is Albert Gibbs, born and raised in Evanston. I am known as one of Joe Hill's kids. I come from Foster School. Started kindergarten there in 1957. Grew to have the kind of love for that place that I called it Red Rock Prison. Called it a prison because they didn't take no stuff. And when I discovered that not only were my mother and father behind what they didn't take, so was my grandparents behind what they didn't take, Foster School would let the love flow through the paddle, the rod, the ruler, and if necessary, heaven forbid, Joe Hill. But I say this to let you know what that building means to me. I won't say I'm here for everyone's concern because I can't speak to what everyone else would add of what it meant to their life. But as an 11-year-old kid, I gave my first recital there on that stage. I began music in my home because my family were musicians. But to do that performance amongst my classmates really helped me establish a foundation that for the rest of my life I have entertained from New York to California. My talent has blessed me to be invited around this world to perform. And invariably, I'm always asked, where were you educated? And lovingly, I'd say Red Rock Prison. And they say, well, where was prison at? I said, it was at my elementary school, Foster Elementary. Oh, why do you call it a prison? I said, because in this community, the Evanston community of the 5th Ward, it was a village. The village that extended beyond your family. The village that extended to the importance of what a school means to any community. The foundation that aided the education you started with at home, and Foster prepared me to go anywhere in this world and stand straight up and down and say, yeah, you can say I'm from Evanston, but I'm from Foster because of what it's given me, because of what it's done for me, and because of what I can now offer back to others in the neighborhood and in the community. Our place, our ward, our neighborhood. And when I think of how Foster helped me, I mean helped me in more ways than I know, I'm really derelict in my duties if I don't stand here and tell you what a disservice you're not recognizing it as an historical landmark will do to a whole community. To a whole community. My understanding is preservation of historical sites means just that. It is an historical place that is known from New York to California, from all in between, from Zanzibar to Zaire. They know of Foster School and what it did for the minority black kids here in this town. And people say, everywhere, you'd be surprised, everywhere, people say, oh, Evanston is such a diverse place. We hear so much about Evanston. Well, being a product of this community, I can speak pro and I can speak con at 66 years old. But I choose to speak what is best for Evanston. And that is, you will do the right thing and preserve the history of this building for all of those that are yet to come that still will ask until the day I die, where did you go to school and what did it mean? And I think they need to see that it still exists. It still stands for the betterment of those who may be less fortunate, but we didn't feel any no ways less or inferior to anyone, because those that represented Foster School intended for us children to not live life handcuffed or with a mental psyche that says, well, we didn't go to the best schools and we didn't have the most money. They didn't play that. And so even today, with us appealing to this board, we're appealing to you, not on my knees, not on my hands, but standing before you as a man that says, let's continue to lift up that great institution. Let's not let it die by the wayside because gentrification maybe, or because someone else may have other ideas of what to do with it. I appeal to you to recognize what this means to an entire community. And if you are truly for the preservation of an historical place, then don't overlook this opportunity to allow Foster Community Our Place to stand and exist. And then I can say, when they say, where were you educated? I say, well, I can show you the building. The Prehistoric Society, they made sure it still stood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, former Alderman Holmes.
There's not a lot I can add after Peter. I tell you, growing up in this community, and you had to have maybe lived through it to feel sometimes the emotion. And I always try to talk about the emotion first, because people say, oh, you all are so emotional about a building. Why are you so emotional about a building? Well, he just sort of explained it to you, because it was a family. I went to foster school. Both of my kids went to foster school, but it was King Lab then. And then I had the honor of being able to come back to my old school and run the Family Focus program for many years there. And it wasn't a day that I didn't walk through those halls and have memories of a kid growing up there. I could say, oh, this was my 5th grade room, this was my 4th grade room, that was Miss Dasher's office, that was Miss Montgomery's room. Those kinds of things and those kind of memories are there for many of us. And so the emotion comes with the history and the fond memories. And most of all, I think the service that came with foster school, and that certainly has come since 1983 with Family Focus in terms of being a social service hub, not only for itself, but for other not-for-profit organizations in the community, more like a one-stop service place for services to the community. I look at it in terms of the historical value, the emotional, and the service. So those 3 things are for me in terms of what that building means to this community. If you've been in Evanston longer than 1979, you know that when the school district closed it, the NAACP sued the school district because of the significance of that building being closed was just such an impact on the 5th Ward, and we felt the overall community. And the school district made a promise that they would never do anything with that building that wasn't for the betterment of the community, and that is really how Family Focus came to own that building. And I think Family Focus has the same goals of that being continued service to the community. I hope that you will consider, I think Dino's presentation says it all in terms of the information that you need, and I think that Peter certainly wrapped it up in terms of some of the feelings that are there. There are hundreds of stories, mine, Billy Logan's, other folk that have gone, Dorothy Williams, I can name off folk that have gone through those walls that are there now that are more than happy to come and tell their story about that building in terms of what it means to this community. So I hope that you would take that into consideration when you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the nomination from the community? Okay. With that, if my understanding is that there are representatives from Family Focus here. And if I'll give you the sign-in sheet here shortly.
I signed in here too.
Oh, you did. Oh, perfect.
Yes.
And if you
Mr.
could
Robinson.
introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Bridget O'Keefe. I'm an attorney with Daspin and Allman. I'm here on behalf of Family Focus. I'd like to start out by saying I'm an attorney with a specialty in historic preservation. That's what I do. I work on preserving buildings. That's been my practice for close to 30 years. And so when Family Focus, which is the owner of this building, received notice of the application to designate the building, they were referred to me to understand better what this meant for them, for their organization, and for the building. Let me start out by saying that Family Focus has great respect for this community and their strong feelings towards the building. They share those strong feelings towards the building. They started in this building in the mid-1980s, and they purchased this building, and they since now have grown to 8 sites. At the other 7 sites, they lease space. The only asset they have is this building. And from this building, they have provided, a broad range of social services to serve the community, children, and their families. And they've tried to be a good steward of the building. They've invested at least $2 million in its upkeep, and every year it's been running a significant deficit in terms of its operations. So that's what makes this conversation, so difficult, because they share and understand the role this building has in the community. What we'd like to ask for tonight is to, at this point, reserve our comments. At this point, Family Focus does not support the designation, but they would like to request additional time to have more communication and discussions with the neighborhood and the community. We've had discussions with Mr. Robinson about this, about possibly asking for a 120-day extension to a date certain, to allow times for additional discussion on this issue of the proposed designation. We would reserve our rights to come back at a later date and explore more fully the building's eligibility for designation. But what we'd like to do is allow continued discussion. We had a good meeting this morning with a group that has been created with the hope of potentially acquiring the building. And we will continue to have those discussions, and we need time to explore what options are available. So our formal request tonight would be to ask for that 120-day extension.
Okay, which, based on kind of my calculations, would be to our July 10 meeting. Is that correct?
That would be acceptable to us.
Yeah, that's at least based on my calcs, that would be about 120 days. In terms of process, do we need a motion, or do we need to discuss this initially, or do we want to entertain a motion, or how should we proceed, Scott?
There certainly could be discussion if the committee wishes to. The actual act of continuing would be by motion and a vote on that.
Okay.
Additionally, I don't know if the applicant has any additional comments at this point as well.
Dino, if you want to comment and let us know if you're agreeable with this. And then I think a couple of the commissioners have some questions.
Sure. I think, if anything, I want some clarity on something of this process. Being a neophyte in presentation of this sort, and making sure that me, as well as the community members that are here tonight in support of this application, the 120-day continuance, what assurance does that have? Does this get introduced as a process where there's some protections in state?
Actually, there are, the way that the ordinance reads is that the building essentially is protected through that time until there's a determination on the landmark status, so nothing can happen to the building in that time frame.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then understanding that, then I'm on behalf of the community, was what I want to get a lot of feedback all day long that I was doing today. Oh boy, remind me not to run for alderman. I do accept that proposal of the extension of 120-day continuance.
Yeah, if that's agreeable with your, I think one of the other things too that I think came up in your presentation, I think Mary alluded to it, but I think that we will ask staff to take a look at the conservation district options at the same time. Obviously, that would likely be a longer process than this one and separate from that, but I do think it's an opportunity for the commission as well as Evanston to really think about something for some of the areas in the community that are character defining, but maybe don't necessarily qualify for local landmark status or local district designation or National Register designation. So we'll start to take a look at that on our part.
Sure, and I think we could assist with that. With some of the work that Pitch had done, there was a lot of assessment like that that has already been produced and still is available.
Right.
And also, I can come back at a future meeting to showcase some slides if you'd like to see that, to give like a walkthrough of history.
And actually, kind of in my day job, I've looked at that in a couple of instances. So I'll provide staff with some information on that as well. So. Does the commission at this point have any questions for the applicant, for any of the speakers?
I had a couple.
Go ahead, Elliot.
The first one is that, as I understand it, the owner is Family Focus. Who owns the building right now?
Family Focus.
Okay, so this was an application not by owner.
Correct.
And I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
And maybe I can ask that of Mr. Robinson, although we're jumping ahead. I was curious because there was an intent of declaring it a landmark. Were there any thoughts about what would happen to the building thereafter, other than it stands there as a landmark?
Yes.
And this may be something that should come up in July. So
yeah, this from my understanding, there is, and from my understanding, witness, there is a community group that is working toward services extending beyond the sale and hopefully the incorporation or the opportunity to purchase the building from Family Focus to continue its services. And expand.
Mark, did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to note that I'm really pleased that parties are going to discuss this matter. One of the things we didn't get to today was a careful examination of how this effort would fit within the language of what the ordinance requires. And I think all of us probably would be highly supportive of the idea of preserving community institutions, preserving a sense of community. But the question would be whether that's best done through the landmark ordinance. The ordinance, reading it both requires, I mean, if you're going to use the historical importance, cultural importance nexus, also has a second criteria that it says it also requires that the building itself has sufficient integrity of location, design, materials, and workmanship to make it's the building worthy of preservation. And I think as I was listening to you, I was thinking, I know I spent a lot of time around Fleetwood as my son was growing up and FAM, and I was thinking, today probably the young people would think of Fleetwood as this great sense of community and something that means a lot to them. And I think you could say that about a lot of community places, kind of without regard to what the building is. And I think, to me, you would have to show a stronger nexus, not just the cultural and historic attributes importance to the building, to preserve the building, to fit within the preservation ordinance. And so I'd like to see you find a way to preserve the building. And I think it would be is obviously very important to people, and I am very touched by what I heard. But I would sure like to see if you could work with the owner to find a way to do that maybe is, not trying to put this in a box that maybe it doesn't belong in.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I think we'll get to that in July, really gets to probably, this is a different nomination than we've seen in the past because the other more recent nominations have been more strictly architectural versus social and cultural, which is really what this one is. And I think that may be something that we can talk a little bit more about, and the how that relates to the issue of integrity, which I think is really where we're getting. Mary, did you have something that you wanted to say?
I was going to say, as I said in my presentation,
if you could please come up to the mic.
As I said in my presentation, this is probably the first building that has been nominated for history only. It is something that those of us, Ann and I, longed for years. We tried to get history. It does mean, of course, this is the Preservation Commission, so there has to be a building description. Now, except for, you could say it has integrity of place. It does not have integrity. It has it's had several additions of fire. You could, if you want, and you could actually, if you wanted, you could make a stretch, and it's a nice building. I don't think it's really an outstanding building architecturally. I think it's a very nice building, and you might be able to find some one of the criteria that would encompass the building, give it some architectural status. But I'm not. I quite frankly think the building for history. The history is enough, and the integrity, I think, can apply to the history that's attached to that building. So
I think the thing is we should probably take a look at this more on July 10th and really get into this issue, because given the desire for folks to continue this to that time, I think we'll all have the opportunity to really take a look at these issues during that time, and also see what will happen in terms of the community discussions. And I think that's a very important component of all of this.
Well, I'll be happy to work with you if you'd like some help on that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, can we have Ann?
Ann Earl, I'd like to address your question about sense of place, because the West Side community has a very strong feeling. It's not just another building. Has a very strong feeling of loss of the Y on Emerson Street, of the hospital, and it is a sense of place beyond just being another building. It is part of, it represents their roots in the community that go back well into the 19th century. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. With that, if we can have a motion to continue this to July 10th, 2018.
I move that we, continue the public hearing on the nomination of 2010 Dewey until the meeting of July 10th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, if you could indicate by saying aye. Sorry, Scott, I forgot to say that. So could everybody say aye, please?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right. We're continued to July 10th, 2018, and at that time we'll revisit this issue, and then if we can have a motion to close the public hearing.
Don't close the public hearing.
Oh, don't.
Just you can.
Oh, that we just continued it, sorry.
You, Carlos.
All right, sorry.
We almost-
Brain thing. Okay, next item under old business is 117 Kedzie Street. The applicant has asked that this case be continued to April 10th, 2018. If we could have a motion for that.
I move that we move the project for 117 Kedzie Street to be continued to the April 10th, 2018 meeting.
Great. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Susie? All in favor, if you can signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. That's continued until April 10th, 2018. The next item is the case at 711 Judson. And I know, Mr. Patel, you signed in, and if your clients would choose to speak, if we could ask them to sign in as well.
Mr. Patel, just want to remind you that you have the control for moving forward and backward and the pointer. So
thank you, Carlos.
You are on the driver's seat.
Do you want me to sign in on this one too?
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Everyone cleared out.
Yeah, that's it. Richard's going to drop 10 degrees in the room.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Roshan Patel, and I am presenting on behalf of my clients, Jason Gall and Charles Dybel. We are talking about the property at 711 Judson Avenue. I think, Carlos, you can zoom into the site plan here. So we are proposing to add a one-story frame addition to the south facade of the existing 2.5-story single-family residence, as well as adding a 2-story frame addition to the rear of the house, which is the east facade, to the existing 2.5-story building currently. Also, we are proposing to demolish the existing garage, but build a new 2-story, 3-car garage in the same building footprint as the existing garage. Any questions on the site plans? I can move on to the elevations. So,
if you want to, it might be easier if you just go through it, and then we'll have our questions for you at the end.
And we are seeking a minor zoning variance for a building lot coverage of 33.2%. These are photos of the existing west facade. These are photos of the existing south facade. Photos of the existing east facade, which is the rear. And photos of the existing side facade north. An aerial view of the garage that's existing, and another existing photo of the garage. The next slide is the front elevation. Here you'll see 3 elevations. You have the original that's existing currently. We did present this project at the previous meeting, and this is the proposed original elevation. Taking into consideration the Preservation Committee's suggestions, we did make revisions to this proposed elevation. What we did here was we took down the proposed detailing that we had here and kept it still as the original facade. The side addition, we reduced the height of it to match the existing front porch height of the roof so that it reduces any adverse effect. The height of the windows now match the existing front porch height of the windows, and the proportions are proportional to the existing windows as well. There's no added detail to the stucco addition here, and the roof line is kept simple to match with that existing front porch roof. And you can see a close-up here. The hatch behind for the brick isn't showing up here, but there is no change being done to that facade in the rear. Here is a 3D massing of the new addition to the side here, as well as the existing front facade. This is the proposed south elevation. Here is the original. This is the proposed original. And again, taking into consideration the Preservation Committee's previous comments, we did make revisions, and we matched the height of the side addition to match with the existing front porch roof. Proportions of the windows are now in character with the home to reduce any adverse effect. And the details are kept very minimal. There aren't any details, but the roof line and style match the existing front porch roof there. This is the full proposed elevation that's revised. Here is a 3D massing. You can see here, which is the one-story side stucco addition. Here you can see the proposed rear two-story stucco addition, which we're going to see in the next slide as well. Here is the original, or sorry, the existing rear elevation. This was our proposed original in the previous meeting. Again, taking into consideration the committee's suggestions, we did revise that elevation and reduced any detailing and kept it very simple to reduce or to complement the existing stucco facades that exist. This is a full view of that rear addition. This is the 3D massing, and you can see the rear addition here. That's the existing home here. And the rear addition currently would be approximately this much because the house is existing. That is a line of the original home, and then there was this two-story porch that's existing there. Existing north elevation, and you can see the line of that covered two-story porch here. This is the proposed revised elevation to the north, and this was the proposed original. And here you can see a 3D of that massing as well. We are also proposing to demolish the current existing garage there and rebuilding in the same footprint and square footage, but adding a second story to this garage. And here was the proposed original. We did revise it to complement the home and reduce the details. The windows carry the characteristics of the proposed windows on the existing home. And the garage door style is made to match, to preserve these rear doors that are existing here. Here you can see the south elevation, and here you can see the east elevation, which is the rear of the garage. These are the existing doors. This one is existing. We are proposing the same style, and we are proposing to salvage and repair the existing doors that are here. And this is the proposed north elevation. And here you can see the relationship. There is a slight slope and terrain. And these are the floor plans. Would you like to go over the floor plans, or were you more concerned with elevations?
I don't think we need, if any of the commissioners have any specific questions related to that. So with that, questions regarding the revised application for 711 Judson?
I have two questions, and they relate to the east and the north. You're almost there. Okay, the two new windows that you're adding, in this case, one over that entrance, yes, on the end there, and the other one at that point, you knew. And I'm not quite sure. Well, I think it's more extreme if we go to north. So I think north you have this fairly, I'll try it with mine now if I can get it to aim at the same place. There.
I knew
and, well, I'm just sort of curious about those, since they're, you know, I think all of the other issues you addressed between last meeting and this one in terms of the proportions and how the windows are much more like the in character and all the rest. And these two, I'm not even sure how, you know, about this window in general, what it is. It's an incredible piece of glass, or pieces of glass, but I'm just curious about those windows in general.
Yeah, so if we stay on this elevation, currently there's a staircase, and I'll go actually to the plan so you can...
Yeah, I knew we'd get to the plans.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line.
So here you have the staircase leading up to the second floor. And in this whole corridor, it's just very dark. That whole hallway is very dark, and we want to do something to add some more light to that space, and also filter that light through the second floor main corridor there. So that is why we are proposing to add a larger window, and also aesthetically, we have some plans to do some really cool lighting in that entryway there.
I don't question the idea of putting windows in. I'm just not sure about that particular window.
Are there any suggestions that you, like, would you propose to have two?
I don't know, maybe it would have been better with some sort of stacked windows. I don't know if it would have worked with it. I mean, I'm not sure a triple hung would have worked better than a double. But the proportions are sort of out of whack. Can we go to your SketchUp view that you had of that? Yeah, this, and maybe it's the way you did it. You realize the proportions of this, as opposed, and that, are nowhere near what you've got.
We updated the elevations, but I think that 3D didn't get updated on the window sizes there. I mean, this is to basically show the overall massing. We haven't done.
But it sort of changes when you see that proportion is much closer to the proportions of the others, although not quite either. So,
Julie, did you have some questions?
I did. Well, I appreciate that you simplified some of the massing. I think for me, your 3D renderings, they do a disservice to the design that you're showing, because the simplicity of them it's like this sort of Corbu modern take slammed onto this bungalow, the 3D renderings.
Well, the 3D are there for the massing itself.
Right, except that what you begin to see, if you go to the front elevation with your massing, okay, so I think for me, one of the things about the house is the way the masonry bands around three sides, and then you get the stucco that is added on to the back, okay? And so what happens when you pull out a stucco addition on the side, that you kind of destroy, I'm just wondering if you thought about making that in masonry, because basically what happens is the house is suddenly, not really about what it was about. It's not sort of pairing with the other side. That, to me, is more bothersome than, the long window that Elliot mentioned. But so that's something that I would have looked at if
we
that
did
was
look at
masonry.
it and felt that it was just too heavy for that addition there on the side. But if you'd like to see that change made, I'm sure we would want to consider that.
Well, it's me, so I don't know what other people think. I think to examine what happens where you keep that idea of the masonry wrapping the three sides and then the addition sort of as stucco.
So the
that's in
addition,
my
the
mind.
stucco addition would start.
It's like on the back, like where it does, it sort of ends. Right now it makes a U, the masonry makes a U, and then the back is stucco, and it sort
This
of comes
part then would be
Yes.
stucco, and then this would
Yeah.
just keep at masonry.
Okay, other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, to echo what Julie said, I would agree with that because really, the original house is very simple and it's all about defining that horizontal datum. Where
Yeah, Ken-
the brick comes up. Sorry,
Oh.
the brick comes up to a
Yeah.
particular height and stops, and everything above that line is stucco, and it even continues out onto the porch in the way they did that fascia of stucco at the porch. And with the side addition being stucco, you really lose that strong horizontal line. So I think maybe wrapping brick around that sunroom addition area resolves it, maintaining again that strong horizontal dividing line. Maybe another way to approach it would be to pull the sunroom addition back to about the location of the chimney, and so you still see a little bit of the original brick wall wrap around. There's some options maybe, but I think that horizontal divide is really the number one character defining element of this house, and I want to make sure you
If
follow
that brick
that
can't
through.
be mirrored, though, are we going to risk adding a different aesthetic to it? Because that's
Oh,
a
you'd
really
have to-
old.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to really try and match the color and style and character of the brick, and so that's, when you're thinking about what the possibilities are, that's something to...
It's a type of brick that has, I mean, it's like really porous, and so it's very sharp, and it's going to be really difficult to find something like that. It's very heavy.
You could try colonial brick.
Well, or is it something where you salvage it off part of the house where you're cutting holes for doors and things?
We would still need the whole, this side here, because we currently have, this facade where we can salvage some of it, but then to do,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, it depends on where you'd have to look at where
I mean,
it
there
stops
just,
and
there wouldn't
starts
be
and how
enough
much
of that
quantity.
existing
Yeah,
brick,
I
so.
mean,
This gets into that.
not to solve the design right now, but just to say that horizontal divide is a critical thing, and I'd like to see. I think you've come a long way, and I really appreciate the changes so far. But I think that's really the key thing from my point of view in terms of protecting the original character of the house. The other suggestion I'd make is obviously a lot of the windows in the house now don't seem to be original and were previous bad replacements, so I'm okay with replacing all the windows. The one exception would be is I'd like to see you look at that curved bay in the front where they seem to be the original windows and see if those could be preserved and restored.
I think in that
curve, yeah.
It's
really beat up.
They're in very
They're in
bad
bad
condition.
shape.
Yeah.
This whole house was like I mean, it was completely covered in shrubbery, and it was. We went to. They had a block party with the residents, and we were invited, so we're like, oh, we get to meet the neighbors, and Jason had a key, and so he was like, oh, I can show you guys this. The people in the neighborhood had never even been inside this house. I mean, like some old shut-in lived there. It was completely grown out with trees. Like some of the pictures that Ro had were just like stumps. You know, Jason went there and we spent like our weekends like trying to like clean it up and kind of getting our hands dirty on the property. And, you know, so much of it just like, he just like locked the place up 8 years ago and just like walked away. And an old hoarder had lived there. So a lot of the floors are bowing, you know, I mean, the house is just really distressed.
That whole rear porch as well is
It's just rotting and falling over.
Are there other questions?
No, I'm not convinced of that notion of wrapping. If we go back to that, what is it, south elevation? I think that, and I'm not sure that was all, but were you thinking that that entire segment be masonry, Ken?
Yeah, so they said.
I mean, that's one way to resolve it. I mean, or you maybe
but
slide it back to the.
I think
a
that
couple
if
feet
we,
so you
I'll
see
try
brick
this
wrap the corner.
as best I can. I mean, this is a very different element. It's a one-story element where the rest of the building is a two-story building. Let's ignore the roof momentarily, where you can say one half of it is masonry, one half of it is stucco. This is really an add-on, and this gets into that whole issue that's always been around about should the addition mimic the original or should it not. We all went out to Batavia a couple of years ago, or St. Charles or whatever, and kept flunking the test on that. But
it was Geneva, but that's okay.
Geneva, I couldn't. One of those river cities. But I think I'm not convinced that it has to be the masonry of the building, because I think that already has a completely different character. And how you deal with it, it's not going to be making it a masonry addition is going to resolve that problem. It may match what you see there on the right, but it's already something that's coming out with both of those elements. So I'm not sure that it's the masonry. I mean, unless you say, oh well, we'll split these in half.
Yeah, I don't know that it's the materials so much as it's the, and it's from what was presented last month versus what we have now. I think it's 80% of the way there.
Yeah.
I think it's.
And we are looking to preserve that brick on the inside.
We're looking. We have plans for that, like inside. Like I live in a loft currently, or we live in a loft currently in downtown Chicago. I love living in a house with brick. I mean, and bringing that on the inside was going to be cool for us. But I'm just worried on the outside about matching that, because I don't know how that's going to.
I think I have a potential solution. Could you possibly play with color and maybe try to mimic the color of the brick, but keep it the material of stucco, so it still has like a similar sort of heaviness on the base and gives that same sort of appearance? It might be something to consider.
Isn't color outside of our purview? Or?
Yeah. But I
just,
think that's
just saying that I'm trying to answer the material issue and try to get somewhere there.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to clarify. Color comes into play to be compatible with the existing. So we don't necessarily say, you have to paint your house this color, but you can ask for compatibility of the color they choose for an addition.
Right.
That being said, I think that I had that in my mind. Maybe the color rather than the texture is something that you can change if it doesn't work easily, but you can also.
I think that coloring that stucco to match the brick would just throw it off completely. I don't think that it would.
Right.
It would create more adverse effect than anything.
But I just want to reiterate, I do think Ken's point of if you pulled this is a plan change, but it's a way to resolve something. If you pull it to the back of the fireplace, so you keep that masonry mass, and then you begin the stucco from there, so that you see the corner wrapping around as stucco, as a masonry, up to the mass, and then you start your addition.
So that's starting the addition from here?
No.
I'm not sure where you mean.
From the masonry, from the fireplace.
Where are you talking about wrapping it
from
to?
Here.
Right to the right edge of the mass of the chimney.
And then continuing that as stucco?
Stucco.
Wouldn't you want that to somehow align with windows, if that was the recommendation? Because I think that would be a little odd looking.
I think so.
And that would create.
Shrink the size of the addition.
So starting the addition here.
Can you go to your plan? Because I'm not sure that
so the masonry,
proposed works.
Yeah, that's what.
I think what you're trying to say is starting the addition from back here and then starting it as brick then?
Stucco.
Stucco?
You turn.
And just leave this portion as brick?
The brick goes up, becomes the chimney, comes down. The original brick wall comes up to the chimney, and then the rest is, you just turn it into stucco. So it turns the corner as masonry, becomes the chimney, and then and you can sort of,
Where's that masonry source from?
you leave it as it is.
She's saying to leave it
I'm
as
saying
a stucco.
You want us to move?
No, this is,
This is a discussion.
It's just a
point.
discussion. I don't want you to do anything. I'm just saying that is in a way is a resolution. I'm not.
We are.
Okay, sorry. The problem, though, with that for me is the front room is a dungeon because the south wall has 2 windows that are like 1 square, like 1.5 feet by 2 feet, because the fireplace takes up most of that wall. So I wanted this green room added so that we could add windows, put walk-throughs on both sides of the fireplace, and we can get sunlight in the front room because the front porch is so deep that no light gets into the front windows at all.
And
I think if you look at the plan, it becomes very evident what they're trying to do.
Yeah,
I agree
I agree with Elliot on this, is that we're getting perilously into redesigning here, and that's not what we should be doing.
Okay.
Do you want a motion to approve?
I was gonna say, what are folks first? Maybe the first question is are we ready to approve this one or entertain a motion on it? Are we? Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Okay, that's fine. I move we issue a certificate of appropriateness for 711 Judson.
Oh, Mark, I want to, before you go any farther, we're like streamlining our motion thing. We're going to do all of the criteria together for alteration, construction, and demolition, and we'll do zoning separately. We're on an experiment here tonight.
Oh.
Am I correct, Scott?
Are we the guinea pigs?
Correct, for efficiencies.
First.
That's correct.
First.
And we would suggest if there are...
so if it's turned illegal...
If there are commissioners...
Elliot, don't say that.
If there are commissioners that feel strongly they would vote differently on an alteration versus construction versus demolition, then they could be taken off. But as a matter, a rule, we think it would be more efficient to group them together in most cases.
Go for it. With all of that.
All right. I move we issue a certificate of appropriateness for 711 Judson Avenue to alter the house as described in the agenda in accordance with applicable standards for alteration 1 through 10, and construct new improvements, including the porch, in accordance with applicable standards for construction 1 through 5, 7 through 13, and 16. And for demolition of the improvements as described in the agenda in accordance with applicable standards for demolition 1 through 5.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Elliot, all in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed?
Wait. How many in favor, please? Can you
in favor?
Hold your hand in favor. 4, 5, 6. Correct?
7. Okay.
7
and
ayes.
Opposed? And if you could signify by saying no.
No.
I thought it was nay.
And then if we can have memo address, or a motion, pardon me, addressing the zoning variance, which is essentially a minor variance for the lot coverage.
I move that we issue a favorable recommendation to zoning for the project at 711 Judson Avenue, and that the zoning variances A and C are met or.
Great. Second? Mark is seconding. All in favor?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. And any opposed?
I guess no.
I don't know. It seems like it's
got to be consistent.
Okay.
Need to be consistent.
There you go. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Moving on to new business. The next item is 1200 Judson.
There's no. Is this a sign-in or that? This is a sign-in.
And if you can obviously sign in and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Petrick with Petrick Architecture. I'm here on behalf of my clients.
The address is 1200 Judson Avenue, and we are proposing to demolish their existing garage and replace it with a new garage. And I do better just reading the description. This project...
You can also go forward. Left is... there you go.
There.
And it's your presentation that's submitted to me.
Okay, thank you. This project includes the demolition of an existing garage. It will be replaced with a new garage. My clients are in need of more space, and the structure is beyond repair. The goal is to provide my clients with their need within a new structure that reflects the style, proportions, and materials of their renovated existing 19th century residence. So this is the front elevation facing east on Judson Avenue. When we look at the proposed garage, some of the things that we wanted to keep in mind were like the proportions, the pitch of the roof, the siding details, trim, eave details. So on the garage, we have the same pitch of the roof. We have the same details. We use on the front of the house. They had like different patterns of shingles, but they have, I don't know if I'd call it a scaled shingle, but a shingle on the roof line, under the roof line. But then typically around the house, they have horizontal 4-inch lap siding, and that is what we proposed underneath the roof line as well on the garage.
There's also a pointer right there on the top.
Oh, okay. That's too many things to think about. Oh, okay. So we use this same detail. The windows, this window, not match, but similar to in style that we did on the garage. These shingles we're proposing on the garage, and then this horizontal siding we're proposing on the garage, plus all this proportions of the eave details, etc. Also on the garage, my client on the north side, which really isn't visible by anybody, but he really wants to keep the bikes, his kids' bikes, out of the garage so they don't ding his car. So this was the proposed idea of a canopy over that area. We are holding it back for zoning and the building department. I think I proposed like a 2-foot or 3-foot overhang, but we're holding it back to 1, so it's going to be a very minimal overhang just to protect the bikes. Once again, this is a view of the house looking to the southwest. Did I not include? Oh, wait. Are those behind it, Carlos?
Your elevations?
Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah. They're all there.
Oh, okay.
They're coming.
I was like, I must have forgotten those. Okay, this is the plat, and then the site plan. You can see on this the dash line of the existing footprint of the garage. This is the new proposed. It's slightly bigger. It's still within zoning approval. No variance is required for this project. And this is the front elevation. On this elevation, you can see the ridge line that matches the house. This back roof is also the same pitch, but we also tried to mimic kind of what's happening in the house, where there's a lot of different pitches perpendicular to each other. And then also the shingle style will remain. This trim piece that runs across the upper windows under the ridgeline is also being repeated. It will be painted the same colors. And then the style of the window, it's not the exact proportion, but it's similar in scale and style for the storage space above. And then we're using 4-inch lap siding like on the original house that's running horizontally. These windows, this guard is going to be applied to it. That's really more for, because their kids are always playing. They're worried about balls breaking the windows. And then this door entry is they wanted a covered door entry into their garage. So we've provided, these are salvaged posts that we actually found when we did the kitchen remodel in the walls that were hidden that they would like to propose to reuse. And so that is what those were from the original house. And this is the back of the house, or back of the garage. This side of the house, north side of the house with a covered area for the bikes. And then this side is probably also going to be, we didn't have the window on the north side just because it wasn't really ever visible, but on the south side this will be visible because they're on a side lot of Judson and Hamilton. And so this pitch of this roof is kind of, an important aspect. So I encourage them to maintain with a window and all the details, et cetera. Floor plan. So this is the existing garage. It's kind of, I call it the Hobbit house. It's collapsing on itself. And literally the garage floor is also collapsing inside itself. So we're going to rebuild it so it's stable to protect their cars. I couldn't get a really good shot of the north elevation because there's like the adjacent garage is right next to it. This is the garage next to our garage, and then you can see also beyond. So I know the pitch of the roof is higher than what is existing, but on this street and in this alleyway, actually it is more similar to what's existing versus what is right now reflected. Yeah, my drawings look better of this than what it does in real life because you can see it's quite crooked and collapsing. That's the existing. I guess that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on this one? Are we ready to entertain a motion? Someone want to address this one? Don't all speak at once.
I move
I'll give it a shot.
to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the 1200 Judson Avenue for the demolition of the existing garage, construction of new two-car detached garage. Applicable standards, construction 1, 3, 7, 8, 10, 12 through 15, and demolition 1 through 5.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I think it was unanimous. Any nays? Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Next is 1303 Maple Avenue.
Do I need to sign in?
Yes, you do.
Right here?
And if you could introduce yourself as well.
Good evening. My name is Matt Pater. I'm representing the ownership group of 1303 Maple Drive. I also work for them. I oversee all their construction activities in their north section of the city in Evanston buildings. They currently have 13 buildings in the city of Evanston, about 550 rental apartments, and also some commercial space. Let me just... Okay. This is my presentation now, Carlos?
Mm-hmm.
I put the photos at the beginning. So
Okay.
The same order, they just we reversed it.
Okay. So I started this process. The ownership group asked me about a year ago, and I met Carlos out on site to see what we were up against. We've dealt with historic and landmark buildings throughout Chicago many times. most of the buildings we work on and that the group owns, BJB Properties, they are 90 to 180 years old. So this is nothing that is new to us. The ownership group is definitely engrossed in making sure they upkeep the buildings for their tenants, for themselves, and then also along with making sure that the guidelines are met for historic and landmark preservations. So we looked at a number of different options throughout the process in the last 9 or 12 months. So we looked at, first off, many different contractors. I'm with our preferred contractor here who will get up and speak about the product that we are suggesting to be put in to 1303 Maple. But we looked at a number of different product lines: Weather Shield, Windsor, Marvin, the Integrity and Ultimate, Colby and Colby, and then the Quaker Historic, which those are the ones that we felt gave us the best picture and best look in terms of keeping within the detail and the most glass space that we could possibly have to keep within the look that is currently at the building right now. We also looked at restoration. The biggest thing in terms of restoration was that we had some companies out there, a lot of companies I contacted on the list, either didn't return a call, whether it was too big of a job, they were too busy, or they weren't interested in doing it at all. But I contacted them by email, phone. They didn't return my calls, but a couple of them did, and they gave me some prices and things like that, and we went through it. But the biggest thing was if we're going to completely restore them, which, you know, anything can be restored. These windows are definitely weathered and outlasted their lifetime, being 90 years old or longer. And they have many coats of paint on them, putty, caulk, so forth within them. But if we were to take them out, and that's the best way to do them, remove them, take them to a shop, refurbish them, that would definitely be time consuming, which the company's not opposed to. But when you have 52 apartments and they're all rented and majority of the people are students there, it would be difficult to displace them during their season and put them up somewhere else for 2 or 3 weeks while we get their windows done. We also looked at restoring them within, putting a second coat of glass on them, or putting screens on the outside, which would have been a cheaper way to do it, and we just didn't feel like that would give us the ultimate look and keeping within the integrity and character of the building that it has right now. So with that, we are requesting for you to look at the Quaker window, which is a wood window. And if I can just go, how do I go?
Right.
Okay. Okay. So this is Dempster Street. So wherever there's face brick and maple, those are the ones that we're requesting to put in the wood windows with the divided light, matching exactly or as close to the glass size, the details around them as we can. And then on the back side here, and where it continues with the face brick, now the back side here, where it's Chicago Common, the windows are all different. They're different colors. There's only a couple that have divided light. Some have divided light that was probably put in maybe 20 or 30 years ago. They're just furring strips and things like that. But most of the windows are just clear windows on the back here. But we would still put the wood windows in wherever there's face brick there. And on the back portion, we're proposing to do vinyl windows, the Quaker vinyl windows.
You also have a pointer if you want to show them close.
Oh, okay.
The top. There.
Yeah, so this is the face brick. Okay, so we would still propose wood windows along here. And then the back portion here in this whole gangway, we would propose the vinyl replacement windows. And there's a gangway which it's very difficult to even see any of the windows from the alley there.
and then also the north side of the building, which is right up next to the building next door, and it's all, the Chicago Common areas. These windows here, and Gary will get into it, they don't have any profile. It's just flat stock along there, so it's not repetitious of what's on the common brick areas in the front and the side of Dempster. So this is your typical window with the face brick. We would keep the simulate divided light in there. The lugs on the bottoms, we could replace those, put those in there as well. But we would take out, and Gary will get into it, where we'll take out the entire window and put in a whole new Quaker window. And you will not see much difference in terms of the look, except that it's just be a newer finish on it, like it was just painted. And then Gary will get into what he's going to do here as well with the two windows in the portion in between. Get some other pictures here. So here's one of the windows on the back here, and this is in the gangway. This is a simulated divided light. Obviously, over time, whether it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, our ownership group has owned it for 10 years. These are just furring strips. This is not historic. This is not landmark. They didn't replace it. If they did, they didn't do it correctly. So this is where we're proposing the vinyl windows, no divided light on them. And then here's all the dimensions that we are coming up with, and Gary can go over this as well. So this is Gary Davis again from M&G Brothers Construction.
And Gary, if you can sign in, please.
My name is Gary Davis. I've been in the window business for 35 years. I own MGM Windows and Doors. I'm a distributor of Quaker Windows. Quaker Windows are the biggest historical distributor of windows in Chicagoland area, and as a matter of fact, in the whole country. You probably haven't heard of them. They don't do a lot of advertising, but they are the biggest of historical windows. So basically, on the wood project. It's a wood window, but it's maintenance free on the exterior, so it's a clad wood window. So what they do is they've developed brick molds to match other brick molds or standard brick molds. Typically, most brick molds are the same. They're 2 inches, which is what's out at the Evanston project. So basically, this Quaker will apply that. It'll come out all applied. It'll have the same trim detail. It'll be pretty close to the same glass specs. Obviously, I got to make this window a little bit smaller to fit into the existing opening. These windows, when they were originally put in, were probably put in and then bricked to them. So we got to have a little bit of play to fit them in and square them if anything's out of square. But the look, the divided light, the OG lug, they even have a clad OG lug, which is that curve that's at the bottom of the sash. I don't know where the pointer is on that. But and then when you do triple windows, there's a space in between them. So this will go in here. And
If I could ask you to bring that around to the front or put it on the table, because it's difficult to see.
Sure. On the table or in front?
The table.
Right there. Just set her up there.
Right.
Yeah.
So all windows, whether they're wood or clad wood, typically have the same details. It could be a half-inch difference, quarter-inch difference in some of the details, but they're very similar. So if you have a triple or a double window and you have a brick mold, to make everything maintenance free on the outside, this will be the flat piece that goes in between. It'll give you the same detail as you guys have right now on the triples and the doubles. So your exterior will be totally maintenance free. You never have to paint it again. I got some examples of, if you guys want to see them, I don't have the, but here's some before and afters of, you know, something that was wood that now is aluminum on the outside.
I'm sorry to bother, but we need to have some feedback on the voice.
And just so you know, that's barely on that thing there, just to make sure it doesn't fall. Okay. Yeah.
So the look is going to be virtually the same. We got to obviously figure out a color because there's a cream color on the front and then it goes brown into the alleys. Can we keep it all the same color? And things like that. I see no reason. I think vinyl will be great in the alleyways because it's not a brick mold that's on the rest of the windows anyway. It's just a flat trim all the way around the windows, and then there's an arch in all the bricks that have to be capped.
Yeah.
So I just wondered, so how thick is the mutton on the front?
The actual dividers, the six-like dividing is exactly the exact same measurement. It's 7/8 on both. It's 7/8 of an inch on the existing, and it'll be 7/8.
So is that, because we don't see a detail here, is that so that's an SDL?
Yes.
So it's...
Yes, so it'll be bonded onto the window in the pattern that's on there now, and it will be the exact same dimension. And then on the inside, there'll be a wood one applied to the inside because the inside will be wood. Nobody really does true divided light anymore where there would be 6 panes of glass because it's the edge of your glass
we know. I just was asking if it was, so it's an SDL.
Yes.
When you said that you're removing the windows, and what are you retaining? Are you just taking the sashes out, or are you taking sash and frame?
Sash and frame. And what we're going to do is we're going to leave the inside box because these Chicago walls are deep, and then they got fancy trim. So we're going to separate the window from there, pull it out, and put the new one back into that. So it'll be a full replacement on the wood windows. The vinyl windows we can do 2 different ways. We can insert into the old frame and then cap the sides in the arch.
What happens when you have a pair of windows? Because some of these have a fairly wide spacer between them.
So that's kind of and they make this flat stock extruded in different dimensions. So when there's
Yeah, well, let's start there. That's a good example.
So every one of those windows has this brick mold trim around each one, okay, around all the sides. So then between them, there's a flat spot. So basically, when they install one window, they'll put this flat stock between them, and then the trim will be around the next window. So everything will be maintenance-free there, and it'll look pretty much just like it does now. This will just slide in like behind the 2 brick molds. It'll be totally maintenance free. See, that space between the windows is really where the balance of the old windows have weights in them, and there's pockets. So that's where the empty weights are hanging. So that'll actually be gone. They'll fill that in with wood and install these 3 windows against the wood, and there'll be and it'll be.
And then you have to trim it out on the inside as well.
Yes, inside will all be trimmed out.
The actual trim on the inside won't have, because he's taken out the window from inside the trim, from the stop out. So the actual trim will stay in place. We'll just be caulking and maybe put in a little piece of trim.
Yeah, but he must still have these 2 mullions.
Except for the post. Except for the post. The post will have to have a new trim piece put on the inside. And that little curvy OG lug on the bottom of the top sash, they have an extruded aluminum one that'll be mounted. Right down here.
What is that?
It's just
one of those. I know what it is, but I just.
It's just a design detail.
So.
It could look,
Well, I think that's an important question because it's 440 some windows or whatever.
Well,
can you guys send some of those our way?
Sometimes those don't look so great, and so I'm personally happy, unless it looks.
You wouldn't be opposed to.
No, that's me. You have to. Sometimes there's like a joint and a.
Yep.
There's an obvious gap.
Yeah.
Right, and I kind of agree with that, but
Yeah.
you know, this is just kind of what we're presenting, but we would
Yeah.
definitely not have those put in if it's not required. But
So these are aluminum clad, these are going to be aluminum clad, and the ones in back are going to be vinyl windows? Is that right?
yes,
Other questions?
wherever the Chicago Common is,
Will be vinyl.
yes.
Right.
Wherever the face brick is will be wood and aluminum clad on the outside.
Other questions? Are we ready to entertain a motion on this one? And the standards, I'll start here. The standards that apply are alterations 1 through 10 and demolition 1 through 5. And if you could note in the motion as well that this is for 444 windows.
So I make okay, reading this. I make a motion that we approve a certificate of appropriateness, certificate of appropriateness for 1303 Maple Avenue for the removal of 444 original single-pane wood windows and the replacement of those same 444 windows with Quaker historic clad wood double-hung, double-pane insulated windows with the brick mold. And that's on the... Let's see, that with the vinyl, so that's on the front facade, and I mean, there's no description with the vinyl, so where are those?
Wherever the Chicago.
Okay, fine.
Oh, but how many are there of each? Because this isn't really correct. Right now, it's reading as all of them are going to be the Quaker windows.
Okay, I'll just say, so that the in the face brick, we will there will be the single pane wood. Let's see, Quaker historic clad wood double hung, double pane insulated windows, and on the common brick, there will be vinyl Quaker double hung windows without muttons. And the brick mold will go on the front the Quaker historic clad wood double hung, double pane insulated windows.
Okay.
Applicable standards, we already mentioned alterations 1 through 10, demolition 1 through 5. I would also say that can we just talk about the lugs that is part of the motion?
Sure. Yeah.
That we don't need you to do the lugs.
We
suggest that you could omit the lugs from the double hungs.
No problem.
Okay. Is there thanks, Ken. Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask you one more question? I'm sorry. So this is the only portion of the face brick that they don't have the simulated divided light or the true light in there. Do you want us to put in, keep it as open glass right now? Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever it has right now, just keep it as is.
Yeah. And that was, I assume, what your plan was, correct?
It was. But if you wanted us to keep within, keeping the same face brick options there, then we would do that. In terms of color, are you opposed to, we want to do one color. There's 3 colors on the building right now. There's the linen or cream, there's the gray that you can see there, and then there's the dark brown.
The color really isn't within our bailiwick necessarily, but I would recommend, I think we all would, that it be essentially what it is now.
The same 3 colors?
What?
No, really?
Okay.
I think we got to start this motion all over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Right,
Yeah.
right. I guess that's, I don't think it makes any difference with the common brick.
I mean, we were going to go with a color close to this face brick. Our beige is very similar to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and throughout the whole building.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But you can match the color on the vinyl as well with the
Yes.
clad. Okay.
Yes.
Was the vinyl really a Quaker window? Because it said Manchester.
Oh, that's the series.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
It's like the wood ones, bright and historic.
But they're all by Quaker. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, they're the same.
I just want to make sure that we
But
didn't
this
have
would
a
be-
motion.
this would be-
No,
the
it
color
was
they
the
were
same.
proposing.
It's in there. It's in there. So.
We never got the catalog.
All right.
so.
Anything, anything else, or we're going to have to withdraw the motion and redo it here? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Finally, 115 Dumpster Street. And if I can ask you to sign in and introduce yourselves, sure.
Yes, all you have to do is use the control.
Okay.
And there is a pointer at the top, looks like a star,
Yes.
and then you go left and right to move the other one. There's a silver.
Oh, no, that's the clicker.
That's it, I think. Can you show me the control? That's it.
Oh, that? So this will move it forward too?
Yes. To
Okay.
the left is backwards, to the right is forward.
Okay.
And then at the top is the pointer.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time and the opportunity to present tonight. I'm Andrew Otting from Scott Byron Landscape Company, and I'm representing the Freemans, Randall and Natasha Freeman, and this is the property at 115 Dempster. So this is the existing state, or it's now even more under construction now. Some of the before pictures, before major construction started, we put up fencing to protect some of the valuable plant material here. There are some fabulous old plants on this property, a couple English elms, some wonderful evergreens, some Japanese maples. So we set up erosion and protection based on engineering and city requirements. That's the front entry on Dempster, which is now under construction. That's the new access road for demolition going on in the basement and underneath the house. So that is right now closed off by tarps, and there's a construction road that will be going in there for access. That's the view to the southeast part of the property. That is the southeast corner, which is where the parking for the boat ramp and boat beaches at Evanston there in Dempster. These are the existing walls around the whole property, which are approximately 10 feet tall to the top of the balustrade. So here's the hardscape plan that we presented to the village and for historic review and for variance, minor variance. So at this point, we're redoing the existing walk to curve it in a little bit more. We'll be redoing this existing walk and entry up here. This is existing, we're redoing that, and the terrace is there, but we're redoing it, reshaping it to make it a little bit smaller, and then we're also changing up the material up here to that property. The variance comes in mostly with the addition of the request by the client to put in a pool, a spa over on this end of the property, and this is a fire pit in here. Back here is a kitchen, and there is some variance for fencing, so if we had a pool open the property on this edge, only to meet code as far as the pool is concerned. So the variance comes from, and that's the landscape plan that we presented to the board and commission also. So this shows more of the planting in here. So
There's a fair amount of large existing plant material in here, but then we'd be looking to...
If I can ask you to just get a little closer to the mic.
So then we'd be looking to enhance all the border plantings around the perimeter of the property. The key to this property, or as in the ordinance says, what is the hardship or the difference of this property, is that there is absolutely no backyard to this property. Based on the position of the house and then a variance for the driveway. So the house fits up against this back wall over here, so the garage actually attaches the back wall. Their garage entry and driveway is here, but that's an easement and it's actually off their property. So the only place for them to have traditional backyard is in the front yard of the property. Again, the existing wall is 9 feet to the base of the wall, and then there's a balustrade that goes up about another 18 inches, so it's a little bit over 10 feet tall. So our case for it is to be able to put in these features. We also have a fire pit going in, kitchen with details. This would be a fencing and lattice detail. This is for the fire pit detail. That's a spa. And then this is a lattice screen for all the utilities in the back where the pool equipment, the ACs currently are, and a potential generator back in the back north end of the property. This would be the ornamental gate that would come in off the driveway. Again, the driveway is not theirs, it's an easement. So their property line goes only 18 inches off their garage doors. So they really, they share the driveway with the neighbors to the west. So this is wrought iron detail that would go against the west side of the property and then cut at a diagonal to enclose it so that it would meet code for pool. And the fence on the west side of the property would be inside the property line because there are 40 to 50 foot existing evergreens on the west side of the property. There's really no room to put the fence, so the fence will actually be in the interior of their property and not visible to anybody or to the street scene. So these are perspectives from the street scene. So this is dumpster. So this is the main entry coming up, and that's the only view you really get of the house is through the main gate. The pool would be over in this corner with the spa. And then the second perspective is from the Evanston Beach, Boat Beach, and where the parking is on that side. So again, the pool would be in behind the evergreen hedge in this side. This is the big existing English elm that's here, and this is the view to their terrace and sunroom that faces out to the Dempster Beach and to Lake Michigan. So none of the features that are being proposed are visible from public view from the street scene or from visiting houses even on the second floor. And these are just the details that we were asked to present for all the features in the proposal. So, any questions?
Okay. Questions from the commission? I do want to mention Carlos did receive an email from a neighbor on this particular project. If you can provide us with some information on that, who it was from, and
I'm trying to retrieve my email from here, but the neighbor is concerned with the proposed pool and fences on the front yard. That is, in his view, not typical or in keeping with the character of the district.
Is it the neighbor to the west?
I can't tell you because I don't know what they...
Because there's only 3 houses that actually look onto this property.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 are on... I could go back to the plan, but I don't know if it'll show it up. Yeah. So there's obviously no house on the beach side, because that's the view to the beach and to the east. So the tennis courts are over here, the beach is over here, the boat launches are over here, and that. The only house that is over here is a 1-story ranch that sits on the corner and sits up the same.
Can you go to the mic, please? Because you're...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
It's
okay.
the only house over here is the existing ranch that sits on the corner. It sits up too because it's got the same raised wall feature. And then there's one house to the south, right across from the front walk or front wall. That's a new 2-story house. But you wouldn't be able to see in. The house to the west, there's 40 feet of 50 feet tall, 30 to 50 foot tall existing evergreens in there, so they have no view in from there either.
But from the zoning, are you compliant with the zoning? Can you talk about zoning?
From the zoning, we checked all the setbacks, but again, it's a front yard, so pools aren't typically allowed in front yards, but we put on the plan all the setback requirements and the distances that zoning asked us to put on there. So if the pool was allowed in the front yard, we have to be X feet away from the wall. The water's edge has to be, I don't have it right in front of me, but it's on the plan how many feet it has to be. So we complied with all of zoning's requests as far as setbacks if the pool was allowed in the front yard.
And I understand there's a fence that is also in the front yard that typically is not allowed by zoning.
The only fence would be on the west side to make the pool legal, because that's between the Freeman's house and the neighbor to the west, so to comply with a pool in the front. But again, that fence would have to be set inside the evergreen screen that they would not see, because there's no room for it between the property line and the existing evergreens. And again, these are established old 40, 50-foot spruce that were planted years and years ago.
Are you aware, of any other property in the district that has a pool in the front yard or a fence in the front yard like that?
I can probably find fences in the front yard. I don't know about a pool in the front yard. The neighbor to the west has a pool, but it's in the backyard, but it's up against the property line. So, but they have a pool in the backyard.
Okay. Any commissioner questions?
I wanted to clarify, looking at the drawing, I wanted to clarify what's happening in one spot, which is kind of the actual backyard, so to speak. Can you clarify what that pool equipment and AC pads and all of that stuff up there, like, what are we talking about? What is that structure? How big is it?
So it would be on a concrete pad. There's existing air conditioners back there. So this would be the pool equipment, so we meet the setback requirements for that. And then we would have a 4-foot lattice fence around it so that you can't see it. On this wall, there's an evergreen hedge that would be sitting above the wall and the parapet so that nobody can see in from that. I know there's potential for another house over here. At least we've been made aware of that, but I don't think that'll come into play as far as seeing it. So even if there's a neighbor here or this neighbor or the existing neighbor here or the one on the corner, nobody will be able to see into it, and certainly not from the public access along Dempster or from the beach would anybody be able to see in.
Other questions? The standards that apply to this one are for construction, demolition, and obviously the zoning recommendations are an important component of this one. So there are 1, 2, 3, it looks like. So are we ready to entertain a motion?
I mean, I'm not sure I have mastery of exactly what we're approving. I mean, the pool, obviously, we're approving the zoning variance, but I'm just not sure what the different components are and exactly what's happening.
Well, essentially, it would be for the removal of the existing stuff. It's pretty well laid out in the
This plan drawing is
yeah.
tells the story.
It's the removal of the existing terrace and walk and the installation of new walks, the terrace, the outdoor kitchen, the fire pit, the pool, the fence in the front yard, and then there's screening that he mentioned in there.
So to your question about the fence line again, Carlos, the fence does jog in here because the property line is here, and then there's massive evergreens here. So we can't fit the fence on the outside. So the neighbor to the west would not see the fence either.
And the fence that's new is just that heavy black line on the west edge. The other three sides are the existing concrete.
Yeah, because this is the new fence, because we have to close off that yard because these 2 yards are at grade. Right. The rest of it is all 10-foot wall around there. So when we checked with zoning, we didn't have to have a fence because we'd be pretty secure.
Was that related to the pool issue?
The fence is only primarily related to the pool. I mean, the Freemans may want the privacy or the separation
Right, I
or the
understand
security,
that. But from a compliance standpoint.
it's mostly from the compliance if the pool was being approved. And then you can see the existing walk. So this, we're just shifting it over to get it more centered on the front of the house. We're redoing that walk, and then we're redoing this walk and terrace. The walks and all this material was done in a concrete paver, so it's not really conducive or architecturally sympathetic to the rest of the architecture of the house, so we're going to put in natural stone pavers.
And the new gate is across the driveway?
The new gate is up here, not across the driveway. It comes across at an angle to tie into the corner of the house. This is the back stoop. The driveway's over here, and that's a shared driveway with an easement. Their property line is this line right here, which is only 18 inches off their garage entry. But they don't technically own that.
Other questions?
I just want I assume because the property is so large that this meets the impervious surface.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Any final questions? Are we ready to entertain a motion on this one? And as I mentioned before, the standards for construction and demolition apply, and then we would also need a motion on the zoning variances, and let's see, A, B, and C apply. Is B relevant on this one, or is it just A and C?
I think B isn't. Well, B is the one
Did you
about rate of return.
provide an answer in B, the section C?
To
of
what
the
one?
application? If you look at the application, section C.
Yeah, we submitted everything.
No,
so-
no, I know
Oh.
you submitted, but did you check B for the zoning variance? That would be the fourth page.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what did you check?
I don't know.
You have that?
Thank you. So they check B, which says it's necessary to provide the owner recoverable rate of return in the real property where the denial thereof will amount to a taking of the property without just compensation. So they reply, the outdoor elements we are proposing will provide the homeowners usable outdoor spaces. But that's what they responded. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's applicable. Thank you.
Well, we have to put it in our motion, but I'm not sure that it's for us to determine that. That would seem to be a zoning issue, isn't it?
Those are the standards that are in the zoning ordinance that the commission has to comment on.
Yeah.
Whether you include A, B, and C is your decision.
I guess my question is, as the standard as it reads, is that when you're talking about the relationship to special uses and variations, that it is necessary to provide the owner a recoverable rate of return on the real property where the denial thereof would amount to a taking of the property without just compensation. I'm not necessarily
sold on
sure
that
this
either.
one really applies,
Yeah.
frankly.
I'm not sure it would have applied. I mean, he checked it off. Now, I wouldn't have.
I'm not sure that.
Well, that's why I'm saying that it's maybe, that's an argument he has to now make with zoning if he checked it off, but not with us
Scott,
necessarily.
do you have an opinion on
Scott?
that? It doesn't appear to me that in a single-family residence that the recoverable rate of return would apply to this one.
Okay. So A and C should be.
I think it's A and C.
Yeah, would be what we would be voting on from a zoning variation standpoint.
I agree.
Should I give it a try?
You want to do it? I was thinking about
Elliot
it, but
was
I figured
going.
somebody-
So why doesn't why don't you try, Ken, and then Elliot?
Go
Or
ahead, Ken.
Okay, I'll leave you the zoning one.
Yeah.
I move we issue a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 115 Dempster Street, including the removal of the existing terrace and front walk and installation of new outside walks, terrace, outdoor barbecue, fire pit, pool, fencing, and utility screening, and applicable standards for construction 1, 5, 7, 9, 10, and 12 through 15, and demolition 1 through 5 apply.
is there a second?
Second.
Susie, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay. Okay,
Well,
zoning variations?
Are we simply recommending?
Right, it's a recommendation, yeah.
So we are, I move that we recommend to the zoning board of appeals, the proposed work at 115 Dempster, which requires any number of variances associated with the fences, the patio, and I believe the pool. And that would be in relation to our standards, A and C, in terms of,
Okay.
well, that's it. Better stop.
Is there a second?
Second.
All
Thank
in
you.
favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So does this go to permit then, or it goes to zoning?
I think you go to
you-
zoning.
It will go to zoning.
Zoning.
It will go to zoning as a recommendation.
Okay.
We will submit the recommendation and the minutes to staff, and they will prepare the documents.
Okay.
Is this a major or minor variation?
It's a
Minor.
Minor. So it will be the zoning administrator.
Okay. And what kind of time frame would we be looking at there, do you think?
We can get back to you on that, but likely within the next week or so, there'll be a decision.
I just so we can keep them posted on where
Right.
we're at in the progress.
Right.
So, okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, the next item is the approval of the minutes of February 13th, 2018, and Carlos circulated those earlier today.
And I must say, Diane also provided a few typos and some.
Just a couple.
A couple of those, so the content of the minutes is in good shape.
Thank you, Diane.
Oh, no problem. Had time today. If we can have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from February 13th, 2018, as corrected. That's it, right?
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Elliot, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I would like to abstain since I was not present.
Oh, thank you for bringing
nice
that up.
one.
Yeah, one abstention.
Ooh, Carl, too. You were here?
Next is the our committee reports, the preservation ordinance review. I think all of you received as part of the packet the updates from Mario. If there are any other additional corrections or ideas thoughts that anyone has about them, I think we're pretty close. If you could get those to Carlos in the next couple of days.
And I marked it all up.
Yeah. That
So
would be.
we need to send it to Carlos?
Yeah.
I had sent my,
Did you send it to Mario directly?
no, I had sent to Carlos my corrections about 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah.
Some of them
All
I can
those-
see have been incorporated. I mean, I don't know about yours. I could see a lot of mine were.
I mean, Carlos, I assume those got in.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mario
all of those-
received
yeah.
early comments from you and Elliot and Diane as well.
So Mark, if you or anybody else wants to take a look at it and has any additional ideas, if you can get them in perhaps in the next couple of days, because I want to move this one along if we can.
If I just can add, Mario mentioned to us, staff and Diane, that some of the texts that were with comments or edits from our team or the committee, I should say, he retained the language that is the common language in the city code. So you might see some sections that remain the same, not because the edits are not appropriate, but because he wanted to maintain the consistency of the city code.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, what's our process to complete this?
If you can take a look at it again over the next couple of days, just to make sure what you saw or, wanted corrected is in there, and get it to Carlos, we can get it in and get it going. And then what I'm hoping we can do is have, do we want to?
I will suggest that the commission will approve the revised ordinance so that we can
move it forward?
Move it forward
Okay.
to staff, and then they will prepare all the necessary documentation for city council.
Okay. Does anybody have any issues with that?
So we're approving it prior to any
Subject
revisions?
to.
Subject to any others.
Yeah,
Okay.
to additional revisions, so that it can get passed along. So if we can have a motion to that effect?
Go ahead. You want to do it?
Okay.
No, I thought that you're going to take a look first, and then you're going to come back with whatever revisions you have for the next meeting for the commission to make a motion to recommend city council approval the revisions.
Are we doing it, I guess the question
At the
is,
next
are we
meeting.
doing it at the next meeting, or are we doing it tonight?
I suggest the next meeting because you want to see
Okay,
it.
that makes
fine.
more sense.
That's
why I
fine.
was.
And
Because
again, I would suggest.
we did this last time, though. I mean, this is
Yeah,
where we were last time. I mean, I think if we have any changes, they're going to be like typos or something.
Yeah,
No, there were
would.
some- there were
I
some
will
other
tell you
things.
the stuff that I found was really very minor
Yeah.
things, and that's why I understand what Carlos is saying, because we want to make sure that we have input from everyone. But I think we're really close, and I'm not afraid of moving it
Approve it
forward.
in its final form, subject to just final corrections.
Yeah.
I would just like to take a step back. When we talked to Mario, he also mentioned that any minor changes, he can always address those properly. So if we have this motion tonight and if something else, I think he will take care of that.
Okay.
Yeah, subject to anything we would come up with in the next couple of days.
Yeah, if there's a scrivener's error or some
Yeah.
typo, spelling, things like
Yeah.
that.
Okay, so we're going to move. Okay, so I would move that we approve the rewritten ordinance as submitted, subject to final corrections.
Okay.
Can you please read the number of the ordinance so that's on the record, please?
Okay, I'm sorry. The ordinance is ordinance. It's like a vision
It's
test.
29018. Yeah,
Which is amending
29018.
Title II, Chapter 8 of the Evanston City Code, titled Historic Preservation.
Thank you, Mark.
And
Thanks,
this is a
Mark.
recommendation city council would, with your recommendation, we bring to city council for approval.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
Second? Ken?
Ben?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. I'm sorry, I didn't ask you to voice register here. Okay. Any design guideline updates, Elliot and Julie?
No.
Okay.
I have an update.
Okay.
I have an update. Yes. So the all the documentation that came to us it's on our website, but it's not published because we want you to take a look if you like what we will publish, and any other maybe potential changes to the links or documentation that you are trying to share. So we will send you the link so you can look at it and then tell us what else needs to be done.
So I think the one thing, Elliot, so I think that we have to meet because when they revised the section on what was repairs, all of that.
The grid that
right,
was
and
in
then
the
there was
rules
some,
and procedures.
There also was some verbiage that was repetitive. We had it somewhere else, so we need to just probably meet and review everything because it's been so long.
Well, it's probably a good time to take a fresh
and then we
look.
can look at that so when, Carlos, when do you think you get that to us?
Well, I will talk to Hillary, and she will create a link for me to
That'd be great.
share
and then
with you.
we could do everything.
Right. So this is all internal. It's not.
I understand.
So that's why we need to be very careful not
I understand,
to.
but then, okay, so then we would, once you have that, then we could look at and have a meeting and review the other stuff. Okay.
Okay.
Great. Yay. Thanks, Carlos.
Good news. Staff reports, Carlos.
Let's see.
It's not as great as I thought.
So we made the official announcement for the Preservation Awards via City of Evanston newsletter. We have the deadline for the submissions on April 2nd, and we will have our juries coming 2 weeks from that date, and then we will prepare the presentation, which will be a video, for the month of May. I have already contacted some architects to submit, including some projects for Northwestern, the project on Sheridan Road that was mentioned, the alterations to the front elevation and the back. So I expect to get more applications in the upcoming weeks. We will have a reception as well. That will be before the video in front of the council. So I will ask some assistants to do that from commissioners to choose the date and what we will do for the award recipients that evening. And that will be also recorded, so that will be part of the video that will go in front of the council.
Carlos, were you going to circulate a list of the eligible projects for that? Because
yes.
I'd like to take a look at it. There were a couple of projects that came up in conversations with other commissioners.
Right.
I can think of a couple, and I'd like to make sure that we have a good nomination pool.
So I compile the addresses of projects since 5 years, actually 4 years, and these past years I have completed those, so I will be sending it to you tomorrow.
Okay, great. And you want to talk about the CLG grant?
Right. So we are asking the city manager to sign the agreement between the CLG with the document that it's requesting funding for camp. The total project cost is $10,000, which will be reimbursed to the city $7,000. The program runs until October 2019, but because of the nature of our proposal, which is only one time, we are planning to do it in the fall of 2018. The submission deadline is March 15th, so we are just waiting for the city manager to sign that document. Maybe by tomorrow, I will hope. But we submitted in a few days back, so we're just waiting for the manager to sign the document. I consulted with the CPO, and they were supportive of the application, so we hope that they will approve it too. Nothing official, but they said this is a good project to apply for. Anything else, Scott, you have for that?
Nope, nothing at this point. Thanks.
Okay. Any other items that anybody wants to bring up?
No.
For discussion? Okay. With that, how about a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Oh, thanks. Elliot, is there a second?
Second.
Susie, okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Thank you all very much.